But what the fuck? You watched this twice and you loved it because you like being a nerd and having physics explained to you? If you want to have physics explained to you, please, for the love of God, go on brilliant.org. It's amazing, not sponsored, obviously, or like Khan Academy. No, like, this is a real world with real people and real money and a real industry, and 225 million was spent on this film. This is not for a physics lesson. It doesn't even, like, you gain nothing from this. So I'm going to start off with a bit of context because I think it is necessary for this review rant of this film. So Christopher Nolan is the British-American filmmaker who is obsessed with time. Like, seriously obsessed. And I think the general idea and ambition with his films is that he puts this high concept, physics-infused contemplation about time in the old school, nerdy action film, macho context, and kind of like he tries to make the action film intellectual. So that is what I've gathered from seeing a few Nolan films. And just to start off, I am not a anti-Nolan person. I actually really liked Interstellar and a few of his other films. So it's not like I generally dislike this idea, and so I disliked Tenet. The expectations for this film are very specific because you might have noticed that people don't really go to the cinema. Hello, Corona, how are you? Yeah, it is a time when people do not go to the cinema. And you can imagine what this has done to the industry. There are a lot of stakes on this film. There are certain expectations for this film that I personally didn't have, but I'm gonna rant about this film from two perspectives. The first is from the perspective of someone like me who, yes, I have enjoyed Nolan's films before, but I'm not like a huge Nolan fan that is in it for the action and the physics. So from the ignorant person's perspective, you know, us, the peasantry, I'm gonna rant from this perspective, and then I'm also gonna say and address how this film doesn't even fulfill the expectations of a Nolan fan, in my opinion. You might notice me. Hello, hi, I am identified as a woman in this world, and to me, another film that is about masculinity, machismo, power, the modern world saved by these brave, muscular men running around with their machine guns going like boo 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 boo, because naturally that is how you save the world. I mean, duh. It doesn't appeal to me. I mean, we've had enough of these films, and there's something called James Bond. It has been kind of like a family tradition of ours to watch James Bond all together, and I've loved James Bond despite the glaring, disgusting role of women in it and the pointlessness of it all. But you know what? That idea belongs to a very different context, okay? I do understand where Ian Fleming was coming from. I do not, however, understand why in 2020 we need another film where we have some men, because women in this film, some men that for no aforementioned reason need to save the world from an over-the-top, non-existent threat when there are real-world threats right now that the world needs to be saved from, and you could make tons of movies out of them. And of course, you have to use the tropes that we have seen like 300,000 million times already. The Bond bad, terrible villain that has nothing else to offer except his like incredible evilness. Literally, the character that is the big villain in this story has no other, nothing. For no reason. He's just the worst, most villainous person in the world, and he just sucks. And then the brave saviors that have no other character traits except the fact that they're saviors. And literally, you can tell because this is the protagonist who introduces himself as the protagonist and doesn't have a name. And he has no reason to save the damsel in distress, but he's trying to do it. And he has no reason to save the world from this sort of like worse than Armageddon described in the film. But he does, and he has his sidekick, Robert Pattinson, which is literally one of the silver linings in the film. I love Robert Pattinson, I don't care what he does, I just love him. I'm sorry. Remember Robert Pattinson was just a Twilight guy, and everyone was like, oh, he's a terrible actor, and now everyone's like, oh, he's the best actor ever, oh, there's nothing he can do wrong, and I'm like, I'm not interested in the tokenism of the females in this film. You have 3 women in this entire film. I don't even want to tell you how many men there are, but you can guess. 3 women. This is not a spoiler. One of them is a scientist who is there for like 2 minutes to start like the explaining physics part of the film. And that is her role, and then she leaves and disappears. We never see her again. Then you have the second token woman in this film. It's the Indian, powerful, underworld, like business magnate tycoon who, yes, how cool that it's a female. But again, we see her for like, I don't know how many seconds in the film, and it is so glaringly obvious that the only reason she's put in that position is to like check a box. And then we have the biggest female role, you could even say it's a supporting role, Kat, played by Elizabeth Debicki, who was just, first of all, she's gorgeous and incredible, and I loved her. I'd never seen her before, but I will look forward to see her again in a film that actually cares about her character, because this was the only character that had emotions, feelings, and sort of a backstory. Whoa, shocker, the woman with the feelings. And she is basically the tortured victim, hopeless wife of the really bad guy who is trying to escape from him because she hates him, and all she cares about is her son, whom we only see for like 3 seconds in the film, and we don't even see him then. And by the way, this woman has no backstory, no nothing. I mean, yes, there's like a hint of a backstory, but we don't like... aren't you tired of seeing the woman in the action film who is just the tortured victim? And what shocks me in this film is, yes, okay, you decided to go for the I am going to imitate James Bond, the spy genre film, and use all the tropes like the Blofeld villain, the tortured woman, the like heroic Bond, who by the way finally is black. That's the other silver lining of the film, is that finally we have a black protagonist, and it's not made a big deal that he's black. He just is, and he's amazing. John David Washington. I first saw him in Black Panther Man, and I really like him, so for me that's a silver lining. But he doesn't have a backstory. But anyway, okay, you're gonna use these tropes and these like cartoonish characters, like archetypes, but he does it in such a like non-convincing, overblown, dramatic way. Like, the woman is so tortured, and the guy is so mean, and the protagonist is so indifferent. And literally, my favorite reviewer said it best when he said that it is so emotionally distant, indifferent. And you can have the most beautiful, amazing visuals in the world, and some of them were nice, but if I wanted to go to a film to just see some good visuals, which is the one highlight that everyone agrees on, then I would just go to a virtual photography exhibition. Like, seriously, 225 million spent for some good, like, visual effects and sets blown up. By the way, I think visual effects were, like, minimally used. Most of it was actual real sets, hence all the money spent. Yeah, like, I don't need a film for that. This film is 150 minutes long. 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours of this torture. For what? For some nice visuals? There's literally, you cannot relate to the film or, feel for the characters. There's no purpose in anything they do. There's nothing original about it except the confusing physics that are, by the way, make zero sense. In Inception, they made some sense. In Interstellar, they made some sense. Did the physics buffs whine and rant about how it was not legit physics? Yes, they did, but of course they're not legit physics. They're made up physics. They're not going to make sense. If they did, he wouldn't be making films. He would be at Cambridge writing his, like, innovative thesis on this new discovery he's done about the universe, and he wouldn't be making films. So, of course it's not going to make sense, but that's not my problem. I don't mind being in a, like, film theater trying to, understand this complex intellectual puzzle, and, these characters all nerdy and explaining things to me. I like that, I'm a nerd, I don't mind. But I do mind a film pretending to do something innovative with time, when in reality, it's just like literally 150 minutes explaining things that make no sense. You place these people in sets like puppets, makes no sense. Why do they move from one expansive location to the other? We don't know. Why are they so passionately running to save the world from, like, a threat that is so stupid because we've seen it 300 other times, and especially in a time when we really know what the real threats are, and those are not in films for some reason? No, I'm sorry, it doesn't make any sense. The dialogue is awkward and fake, and just, you keep explaining, and it makes less and less sense the more you watch. I went to watch this film with my boyfriend and my sister was the only one who kind of, like, managed to say that she liked it up to a certain point. My boyfriend is the biggest Nolan fan of the three of us, and he was so disappointed, and he loves Inception, and he loves Memento, and he loves Interstellar, And yes, at this point I just have to throw in that the score was not by the usual collaborator Hans Zimmer, because Hans Zimmer was committed to participating in Dune, another 2020 film. Unfortunately, Christopher Nolan had to choose a different composer, but that's really, like, the music is great, okay? I had no problem with it, even though it covered the dialogue. As if the film wasn't obscure enough, as if the purpose and everything the characters said in this film were not obscure enough, you had to cover up the dialogue with some loud sound, like music as well, just in case anyone was left a bit less confused than you would want them to. And again, if what you're going for is pretty visuals, let's congratulate the director of photography and just go back home. You know, we don't need to sit there and pay money and sit and torture ourselves for 115 minutes. Seriously, 3 hours, 2.5 hours. This is the first time that I have a disgusted, annoying, irritated look in my face in a movie theater, and I turned back. This was towards the end of the film, by the way, for like full transparency. And I turn around and I see the entire row behind me having the same expression as me. And this is just rare, because usually people are not as frustrated as I am in films that I find super annoying. But literally I saw the same exasperated, just done expression of the faces of the people behind me, and I actually felt a tiny bit of, like, you know, emotional compensation, because I thought, you know, at least phew, I'm not the only one tortured. I did contemplate leaving the movie theater like about 3 times, but then I thought I didn't want to do that because I was with my sister on one side, my boyfriend on the other side, and I thought, you know what, they're working through it, so I have to. And then I started taking notes on my phone about how much I like hated this film, because I needed to like let it out somewhere, and that was like past the halfway point of the film. And my sister was irritated because I had the screen on my phone, like, because I was typing. Last week I was at a movie theater. I was watching a movie. Important to clarify that I wasn't just at a movie theater sitting there admiring the walls. It was Tenet by Christopher Nolan. As I kept staring into all those long shots of planes, boats, helicopters, explosions, automobiles, as I kept seeing all the money put into this 2+ hour of wasted time,
there was really nothing to pay attention to. Nothing made sense, and if I could, I would have laughed at how ridiculous everything sounded, except I was too pissed off and annoyed.
So first of all, physics and exposition, nope. In other films, like I said, Inception, Interstellar, the physics and the whole I'm gonna spend the entire film explaining to you what is happening works. Because of course, if this is like a over-the-top, non-existent, complicated, science-y concept, you have to spend time explaining it to the like people watching, because spoiler alert, people are not interested in a film if nothing makes sense. Like, no one, it's exasperating to watch something for 2.5 hours if you understand like exactly 0.5% of it. And that is something that Inception or Interstellar did successfully. They were explaining what was happening, and it made sense to a certain extent, so you felt smart enough to continue watching, but also intrigued enough to like feel like, you know, the film is a bit smarter than you. And, you know, maybe you had to watch it 1, 2, 3 times, but you gained something out of it, because part 2, you cared about the characters. This is a film that so obviously wants to tell you it doesn't care about the plot or what the characters are doing, that the main character is unnamed, and the relationships between the characters and everything they do, like, makes no sense. The characters have not been sketched, there's no, like, psychological justification for anything, no motives, no backstory, nothing. When there is, it's so superficial, so shallow, like, checkbox. Again, you're expecting this high concept world and action. But this was not a high concept world with action. There was action without a purpose in a visual alternative reality that had inverted bullets. And this is not a spoiler. And to add to the frustration, because as every freaking review mentions, this film is a palindrome. This film does like certain scenes again. So as if you weren't like frustrated enough, you have to rewatch that thing that you didn't understand the first time, only to not understand it the second time, or to not understand why it is happening a second time. Like, literally, even if you try to, you know, find the silver lining, grab onto it, and be the good loyal Nolan fan that you are, you just can't, because it just, there's nothing there. I feel a bit better now. Yeah, I hope at least, you know, one person enjoys this video enough to like hit the subscribe button and boost my ego. Let me know how much you hate me, like me, or are indifferent to me in the comments down below. I will see you next week. Bye! Don't go to the cinema.
So Mr. DJ, keep those pockets playing, 'cause I'm having such a good time dancing with my baby. Everybody